The rain hammered against the cracked pavement of New Houston's 3rd District, where humanity's newest and poorest residents gathered each morning. Thomas Reeves adjusted his worn jacket and quickened his pace toward the construction site. 43 years old, divorced, and barely scraping by on manual labor wages. He had stopped noticing the alien refugees years ago. They were just part of the landscape now. Another consequence of Earth becoming the galactic dumping ground for problems nobody else wanted to solve. A small hand tugged at his sleeve. Thomas jerked away instinctively, then looked down. The girl couldn't have been more than 9 or 10 by human standards, though with the Velori species, it was hard to tell. Her skin shimmered with a faint blue luminescence that marked her kind, and her large eyes, too large for her thin face, stared up at him with desperate intensity. She wore clothes that had been mended so many times, the original fabric was barely visible. "Please, sir," she whispered, her translator collar rendering her words in accented English. "I need to hire you." Thomas tried to step around her. He was already late, and Martinez would dock his pay again. But the girl moved with him, pressing something into his palm. Crumpled bills. He counted them automatically. $7. "I just need a father for one day," she said. "Please." He should have walked away. Every instinct screamed at him to keep moving, to not get involved, to protect the small amount of stability he had left in his life. But something in those enormous eyes stopped him. They reminded him of his own daughter's eyes, back before the divorce, back before Emma stopped answering his calls. "What are you talking about?" Thomas heard himself ask. The girl's name was Lyra. She explained it all in a rush as they stood in the rain, her words tumbling over each other. The Velori had a tradition called the witnessing, where children on the cusp of adolescence had to present themselves before the community elders alongside their parents. It was how they were recognized as full members of society, how they received their adult names and their place in the social structure. "My father died in the crossing," Lyra said, her voice small. "The ship malfunctioned. 43 people in our pod didn't make it. Mother says we were lucky because most of us survived." Thomas felt something crack inside his chest. "Where's your mother?" "She works in the recycling plant. Double shifts every day. If she misses work for the witnessing, we can't make rent." Lyra looked down at her feet. "I saved for 6 months. I have $7. Please, sir. I just need someone to stand with me for 3 hours. That's all. The ceremony is this afternoon." He should have said no. $7 wouldn't even buy lunch. He had his own problems, his own pain. The world had taught Thomas Reeves that caring too much only led to heartbreak. "I need to be at work," he said, but the words came out weak. "Please." That single word weighted with every ounce of hope a child could muster. Thomas looked at his watch. He looked at the girl. He thought about Emma, about all the school plays and soccer games he had missed, about how his daughter had needed him, and he had been too busy, too tired, too focused on work that never seemed to matter in the end. "Keep your money," he said quietly. "Let's get you to your witnessing." The Velori Community Center occupied an abandoned warehouse on the east side. Thomas had passed it 100 times without really seeing it. Inside, the aliens had transformed the space into something that felt both foreign and strangely familiar. Bioluminescent plants grew in careful arrangements, casting soft light across walls covered in intricate patterns. The air smelled of something like cinnamon mixed with ozone. Lyra led him through clusters of Velori families, all preparing for the ceremony. Thomas felt the weight of their stares. He was the only human present, towering over most of the aliens by a foot or more. Some looked curious, others openly hostile. An elderly Velori approached, his skin darker blue than Lyra's, marked with the silver patterns of advanced age. He spoke in their clicking, melodious language, and Lyra's translator remained silent. Thomas understood anyway from the tone and the disapproving look. Elder Torvin says humans don't belong at the witnessing, Lyra translated unnecessarily. He says I should wait until next year when maybe Mother can attend. Tell him I'm her father for today, Thomas said. Tell him that's what she hired me for, and I take my commitment seriously. Lyra translated. The elder's expression shifted slightly, some emotion Thomas couldn't read crossing his face. He clicked something else, shorter this time. He says we will see if you can stand properly, Lyra whispered. The ceremony is difficult. The witnessing began with the children arranged in a circle, their parents standing behind them. Thomas learned that he was meant to place his hands on Lyra's shoulders and stand absolutely still for the entire 3-hour ceremony. No sitting, no shifting weight, no breaking contact. It was a test of commitment, a physical manifestation of the parental bond that was supposed to sustain children as they grew. The first hour passed slowly. Thomas's back began to ache. His knees, damaged from years of construction work, protested the stillness. Around the circle, Velori parents stood like statues, their faces serene. Some children sang, their voices creating harmonies that made Thomas's skin prickle. Others spoke in their native tongue, reciting what sounded like poetry or prayers. When Lyra's turn came, she spoke in English for his benefit. I am Lyra of the Podkestrin, she said, her voice barely audible. Daughter of Myra who works, daughter of Kelvin who died so I could live. I want to be worthy of the crossing. I want to be worthy of the sacrifice. Her shoulders trembled beneath Thomas's hands. He realized she was crying, trying to hide it, trying to be strong. His own eyes burned. He squeezed her shoulders gently, the only communication he could offer without breaking the ceremony's rules. The second hour was harder. Thomas's legs shook with the effort of standing still. Sweat ran down his back despite the cool air. He watched other parents around the circle, saw how they suffered in silence, how their love for their children manifested in this simple, brutal act of presence. He thought about Emma again. How many moments had he missed because he was too tired, too stressed, too focused on providing rather than being present? His daughter had needed him to just stand beside her, to be there, and he had always been somewhere else. During the third hour, Thomas's vision started to blur at the edges. His knees felt like they might buckle. The pain had spread from his back into his shoulders, down his arms. Every muscle screamed for relief. Around the circle, children were crying openly now, overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. Some parents swayed, but none sat, none broke their contact. Elder Torvin began to chant, and the other adults joined in. The sound filled the warehouse, resonating off the walls. Thomas didn't understand the words, but he felt their meaning in his bones. They sang of continuity, of connection, of the unbreakable bonds between generations. Lyra's shoulders were rigid beneath his hands. She was trying so hard to be brave, to not burden him, to make this easier. Thomas leaned down slightly, breaking protocol, and whispered, "You're doing great, kiddo. Your father would be so proud." She let out a sob then, and he held her shoulders tighter, anchoring her through whatever storm of emotion was passing through her small body. When the ceremony finally ended, Thomas's legs nearly gave out. Other parents moved to embrace their children, but he didn't know if that was appropriate. Lyra turned and looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, and then she wrapped her thin arms around his waist and held on like she was drowning. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Thomas knelt down, ignoring the protest from his knees, and looked her in the eye. "You did all the hard work. I just stood there." "You stood," she said simply. "That's everything." Elder Torvin approached them, moving with the careful deliberation of age. He spoke in English this time, his translator rendering the words in a gravelly baritone. "Human Thomas, you have honored our traditions. The witnessing requires presence, commitment, the willingness to suffer for those we claim as our own. You did not have to do this thing. Neither did you have to let me, Thomas replied. The elder made a sound that might have been laughter. Lyra's mother will be told that her daughter was properly witnessed. The community recognizes the child's transition. He paused, studying Thomas with ancient eyes. Why did you do this? She is not your blood. Thomas thought about his answer carefully. Because somebody needed to stand with her. Because I know what it's like when the people who are supposed to be there aren't. Because $7 was everything she had. And I had 3 hours I was going to waste anyway. You lost a day's wages, Torvin observed. Yeah, well, some things are worth more than money. Thomas stood wincing. I should probably go. Lyra pulled a crumpled paper from her pocket. I made you this. It's not much. It was a drawing of 2 figures, one tall and one small, standing together beneath a sky filled with stars. At the bottom, in careful English letters, she had written, My father for a day. Thomas took the drawing with shaking hands. Something broke open in his chest, some long frozen place. When Eddie last cried? Years, but tears came now, hot and unexpected. Thank you, Lyra, he managed, for letting me be part of this. As he walked back out into the rain, the drawing carafe